Hello, my lovely. This week I'm honoured to share the first part of an incredible two-part conversation with Linda Meduri, a mother with a story so powerful I simply couldn't fit it into one episode. In this first part, we're diving into the myths and misconceptions around getting pregnant and early miscarriage. We talk about how hard it is to explain the depths of our pain to others, the well-meaning yet dismissive comments that often make things worse, and the devastating lack of care for early pregnancy loss. We even begin to unpack at the gender medical gap, how women's pain is so often ignored or minimised. If you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or like your grief wasn't valid, this episode is for you. You are not alone.
So my name is Linda. I'm a new mom. My son was born August of 2024. So he's almost 6 months. He's 6 months in February. So in about 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow. So you're still in the thick of it then.
I think I slept a good maybe 5 or so hours last night. He's still navigating that, but let him take his time. It's fine. My husband and I live in California, and we've been here he was born and raised here. I was born and raised in Kenya, and we met in San Francisco. So we've been here together for about 5 years now. Got married in 2023, and then immediately decided to start a family. Best decision ever. Nice. And I'm just navigating motherhood. I jumped right into it, and it has been really, really fun, exciting, interesting, confusing, everything. Just like
all of the things.
Absolutely.
So when you and your partner decided that you were going to have children, is this sort of something that you always wanted? Could you see that when you were a child, you're like, I'm going to have a family and I'm going to have loads of children, or that kind of thing? Was that something on your...
It's interesting because we talk about two things. We talk about the wedding and we talk about family. And I have never been a person who planned. I never had, how some people have a Pinterest page where they have planned out their wedding and what they'd want to wear. I was never that person. What I wanted was one thing that was consistent. I just wanted to be happy. I wanted to find someone I could be happy with. Family or not, it didn't really matter. Wedding or not, it didn't matter. So I was more driven by, am I happy with this person? Do we get to do fun things together? That's it. And then if anything else follows, I'll be great. When I met my partner, however, I just fell in love with his personality. And I was like, if I was to have a child with this person, how fun would that person be? That baby be in a mess of just the two of us? And so it was pretty clear then. I think once we got married and we were on our honeymoon and we're like, I think our wedding night, actually, my bridesmaids, they remember we partied so hard. And then they came back to our place. And I think all I kept saying is yep, I'm going to have a baby. I'm going to have a baby. So I think it started just knowing the kind of person he is and wanting to procreate with him and have a family. And it worked out. We have a kid that is both our personalities, which is incredible.
I can't wait to sort of see, maybe connect with you again in a few years' time and just see how your little toddler's doing and what kind of personalities come out with and things like that. It would be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So take us back right to the start, getting pregnant, because obviously you've decided that you want to get pregnant, things like that. Some people have trouble, some people don't. Were you quite easy to fall pregnant?
So interestingly, we got married June of 2023, and before, growing up, just a lot of similar to a lot of women or a lot of child-rearing individuals, we are told do not get pregnant. If you get pregnant, your life's going to end. You're not, that's the end of everything. So you're told that all through your teenage years. And then you have this small window where the world says, now is the time to get pregnant. And you better go ahead and get pregnant right now, because if you miss this period, now you're at risk if you ever get pregnant.
Yeah.
So if you add like career and just life in between that, and the fact that could you get pregnant, could you not, like all these things could delay that process. For me, for some reason, and I studied public health, like I understand the anatomy. I feel like I was like deep in it. I knew everything that, you know, what it's like, what it takes, and all of that. But for some reason, I just never expected to have the challenges that I had in getting pregnant. Like I had in the back of my mind, yeah, we're gonna get married, and then we're gonna get pregnant. Yeah. And then we're gonna have a baby. And then life is just gonna, you know, what's the issue?
Yeah.
And so we were on our honeymoon. I actually got pregnant in Morocco. We were on our honeymoon. And on our way out, in flight, I had these ovulation tests. Like I was on it. I was like, I am getting pregnant. And so I think I tested and I was ovulating and I was like, babe, it's happening. Like as soon as we land, we need to make this baby. And the entire time on the honeymoon, I didn't know that I was pregnant, but I was struggling. You know, I was like, I don't feel like myself. I don't know what's going on. But I just stuck on drinking champagne. Like that's all I was drinking. I was just drinking champagne. I'm having a good time. We get back and I think I'm trying to remember what triggered it. I think I just was like, let me just take a pregnancy test. I feel a little weird. I'll take a test. So I take a test and it comes back inconclusive. Like there was it wasn't clear what it was. And then I wait a couple of days and then I take another test and it actually comes back positive, but it's very faint. So we go to a clinic and I'm like, am I pregnant? And they're like, you're 4 weeks pregnant. So we had just come back from our honeymoon and I'd been 4 weeks pregnant, which like coming back, we had a 3-week honeymoon.
Yeah.
Coming back, I got pregnant like the day that the honeymoon started. So we're excited. We're like, look at us. We are the lucky ones. We got married, we go on our honeymoon and we get pregnant. I mean, the universe is just like on our side. We're so lucky. That was July. In August, we go to a family event and I'm fine. I'm pregnant. I'm feeling good. We haven't told anyone yet because it's still in the first trimester. And one of the nights, it was a family reunion. I remember waking up at around 2:00 in the morning with the worst stomach pains. And I go to the bathroom and I'm spotting. So immediately I'm like, okay, there's no way. Maybe it's just spotting maybe it's just like part of the process.
Yeah, you kind of start looking up on Google and things like that. And it's like, oh, well, it could be implantation bleeding and it could be this and it could be that. And you're like, oh, it's fine. It's fine.
No big deal. I'll be okay. And the pain was so bad. So I panic and I'm like, you know, we need to go to the hospital. Now we're in the middle of nowhere. We had to find an emergency room. We go in there and they are just not as compassionate because it's like a really small town. So I'm crying. I'm like, what's going on? They're not really talking. They're just like taking my vitals. They're not really talking to me. They're like just really just dismissive. And I'm like, is everything okay? Like, can someone tell me what's going on? And finally, they're like, your blood pressure is really high. We're going to have to take you to do an ultrasound. So I go in and they're like, oh, how many weeks did you say you're pregnant? And at that point, I was supposed to be 6 weeks. I was actually going to hear the heartbeat the next week.
Yeah.
And they're like, you do not have a fetal pole. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, like if there's a baby in here, either the baby is just developing really slowly, which is an issue, or the baby is not going to make it.
Yeah.
And I just remember losing it. I mean, and then having to come back and go to the family event and like put it all together. We're supposed to be here for one more day.
Yeah, especially when people don't know and you can't just...
Nobody knew.
Yeah.
Nobody knew. As it happens though, one person there, they were eating oysters. And so they said, hey, do you want some oysters? And I was like, no, I don't want oysters. And then that person was like, are you pregnant? and I had to turn around because the tears were just like, I was like, I don't know if I'm pregnant. I don't know if I'm pregnant anymore. So that was the beginning of me losing the baby. And it took a week for me to lose the baby. So we went back to LA, and it was only like I went to see the doctor, and they kept saying, just come back in 2 days. Let's see if we'll have a heartbeat. Come back in 2 days. And then on one of the Saturdays leading up to the Monday that I was supposed to go in, I had a miscarriage in traffic on my way to like Santa Monica or something. And it was one of the most traumatic experiences my husband and I have ever had. It changed me entirely. It changed me completely. And that was in August. I lost the baby.
Yeah.
So it was pretty rough, like very unexpected. I was so resentful to the universe. Like, how can you give me something?
Yeah, and then take it away so easily. Yeah.
I blamed myself a lot. I thought, maybe it was the champagne I was drinking, which is like, no, people have been partying so hard and still had healthy babies.
Yeah.
I felt like I felt so silly for not thinking that was an option, that could happen. And it was pretty rough.
Yeah. It can be. I mean, I feel your pain. I've been there. I've had 2 miscarriages myself. And you do, don't you? You blame yourself. You kind of go, well, it must have been this, or it must have been. And it goes down to like, you get so obsessed with it. It's even like, well, I was wearing high heels that day. And it's just like, it clearly has nothing to do with it. But you can't help yourself because you're looking for a reason. And actually, sometimes you're either never going to find out what that reason is, or there isn't actually a reason to be found. But as humans, we're like, but there must be something I can do.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of shaming, a lot of blaming. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't talk about it. I realized really fast. But what I found out was the minute I started talking about my miscarriage, almost every woman around me had gone through it.
Yeah. It's amazing how you can say that. And you're like, why did you never say anything? Why did you never say it? Like, I could have supported you. We could support each other. And we just don't. And it happens with so many things as well. It's unreal.
Yeah. I mean, the minute I started talking about it, my hairdresser is like, oh yeah, I've gone through that. My boss, oh yeah, my boss at the time, I've definitely gone through it. Friends, like so many people that were like, oh yeah, I've had 2, 3, and then finally, had a baby. And when you're fresh out of a miscarriage, I swear you're convinced you will never have a baby. That was me. I was convinced like I will never have a baby. And so we were not trying for my son now. I gave up. I threw away all the ovulation tests, and I was like, if I'm not supposed to have a baby, then that's it, and then out of nowhere in November, I was pregnant, so, and we're going to try again. But now that I know what I know about miscarriages, I think I'm going to go into it like much more mentally like prepared.
Yeah.
I was so shaken with the first one because I was just not prepared at all. And I want to just scream at the top of my lungs for any person who's getting ready to get pregnant or, wants to have a baby, to just know, like, it sucks to have in the back of my mind, like, that could be something that could happen. But for me and my personality, if I knew that would be something that could have happened, I would have taken it better than, how I took it,
Yeah. But again, it's that thing of we don't talk about it, we don't tell each other about it, we don't have that thing. It's almost shameful. I think one of the reasons why we do look at ourselves and go, well, I must have done something wrong. I've done this, I've done that, whatever. Is we're kind of brought up like that. It is our fault. It's our body. We've taken responsibility for it. So therefore we've done something wrong to do that. And then because we're blaming ourselves, because we kind of see that as being our fault, we then don't want to admit to other people that we've gone through this because it was my fault and I've done it and I should have done something better. So therefore I'm not going to tell anyone because I'm hiding. So yeah, it's not a shameful thing. It's not something that you can necessarily control. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you're there, like necking 7 bottles of whiskey every night and getting absolutely legless on drugs and all the rest of it, then yeah, something's going to happen. But you know, if you just fairly normal, you're just going about your normal day. I mean, let's face it, you don't know you're pregnant until you are at that point anyway. So whether you're trying or you're not trying, you can't expect to keep your entire life completely sober and, you know, not wear high heels or whatever it is, you know, you can't do that.
You just don't know until it happens. And I feel like that's the predicament there. And you're supposed to, you know, that I remember when I stopped taking my birth control in preparation for the wedding, and because we're like, okay, yeah, we'll try to have baby. They tell you need to be so relaxed, like don't worry about anything. And it's like after the miscarriage, I was just a mess. Like the whole, I mean, the fact that we got pregnant within like a couple of months is, I think a big part of it was just I had to force myself to stop thinking about it. So it's like it's it changes your life. It changes your life entirely. And I wish the community of women who have gone through miscarriages, like I wish we had a stronger community where we would talk to each other, because the next part of it is like pregnancy after a miscarriage is torture. Like the entire pregnancy, you're just like, is this the visit? Is this the visit? Is this what I'm gonna learn? What is that spotting? What is that? What's going on? Why am I, you know, I didn't feel a kick. Like I was worried all the way until when I held him in my hands. Like the whole time I was like, okay, it's happening. And then I also developed like a complete resentment of other women who seemed to just have it really easy and just got pregnant. They didn't have it.
Aren't they everywhere? Like, especially you're going through this thing, and every other pregnant woman on the planet is sailing through it and glowing and having this, and you're like, how? Like, why am I the only one?
Right. And I would ask myself, like, you know, I went through stages. One was like just pure frustration, and then I was angry, and then I was jealous. And I was like, how does it feel to like go through a pregnancy without any worries? Because I did not experience that. I hope that a future pregnancy is that way. But I think once you've gone through something as traumatic as a miscarriage, you sort of like carry that. Like I'm always going to worry.
Yeah.
You know, anything new, I'm going to worry.
Yeah. I think there's a big issue around particularly early miscarriages as well. That the general consensus is, oh well, it wasn't really a baby yet, and it was just treat it like a late period, and like really dismissive things. And there's nothing to show that you were pregnant or that you'd had a miscarriage. You don't get, like, it's not up until a certain point. I know it's different in different places, even within the US, it's different states have different things. I know for us here, let me get it right, I think it's 22 weeks. At 22 weeks, you can then have like a burial, a birth certificate, death certificate, all that kind of stuff. But up until that point, it's not seen as a pregnancy. It's not seen as another life. You don't get all those other things. So you don't get anything kind of tangible. And obviously, baby's very, very small at that point. You couldn't even really tell like baby from a clot and things like that. So you don't even have that sort of thing. You don't get time to grieve. You don't get sort of time off work. Or it's just not recognized. And I think as a community, we really let ourselves down and let each other down by not having that chance to be able to grieve and to be able to move on and to get therapy and different things like that that you would actually need. Because if that happened at 27, 28, 31, 32 weeks, whatever, there'd be a whole set of support in place. But because it happened at 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, it doesn't really matter. Bad. It's horrible.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And for me, like, just speaking for myself, that was my baby. Like, that was, regardless of like 6 weeks, like that, I had already thought through names. I'd already thought through future. I mean, that was my child. So
Because you do get excited as well, because especially when it's your first and it's the first time you've been pregnant and things like that, you kind of go, oh, I wonder whether they're going to have my nose or daddy's eyes, or and you go through all of these things within the first few weeks.
100%. And you know, the stories, like I was like, I want to tell them where, like, we were on our honeymoon, when we conceived, like, should we call them a name that's like something from our honeymoon? Like, you go through, we had even given my in-laws, we sent them, like, you're going to be grandparents. Like, that's, we were so excited. I mean, and the calm down from that excitement is just, I don't wish it on anybody. No. Like, having to pick up the phone and say, the grandbaby that you thought you were having, you're not having anymore. Yeah. It's brutal. I mean, so, and the second time we got pregnant, I was scared to tell anybody. Like, we waited way past the 12 weeks. We were like, nope, I don't know. What if something happens? So I kept going back to my doctor and saying, are you sure that after 12 weeks, you know, something can't happen? And he's like, I'm not saying something can't happen. I'm just saying the chances are pretty slim. And I'm like, well, I want confirmation that nothing will happen. And he's like,
yeah, I can't do that.
You know, but it's interesting that you say that, like, the world just keeps moving. I remember the job that I had at that time. I was doing contract work and I had to do an all hands while I was, like, actively having a miscarriage that week. And I'm standing there speaking and I'm actively having a miscarriage.
I mean, I've seen this in a few other reels lately, because obviously all of my Instagram and Facebook and everything is literally covered in pregnancy, birth, and all that kind of stuff. And there's been a few recently, and I can't for the life of me remember who it is, but she's a singer, and she was actively having a miscarriage whilst on stage singing, because letting down however many thousands of people in the audience would have been absolutely tragic. But the fact that she's having a miscarriage, now just pull your socks up and crack on, it's your job, kind of thing. And it's like, no, just no.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's like, you know, someone would say, well, Linda, you did not have to do that. You could have just said no. But it's like, when it's happening, you almost like what is it? Disassociate.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay, I just got to get through this. At least based on personalities. Like, my personality was, I just need to be as preoccupied as possible, and then time will pass and maybe I'll feel better. And the busier I am, the less I get to think about it. And I still kept convincing myself, like, maybe it's just like a little bleeding and then the baby will be fine. I think the last time right before the major miscarriage, the major loss happened, we went in to see the doctor and you could hear heartbeats.
Yeah.
While you're walking to go into your room, you can hear other moms hearing the heartbeat. It tore me apart.
Yeah.
Completely tore me apart. I almost feel like they should separate the wings. Like, there should be one side where you'll confirm. Like, if you go in and say, I think I'm having a miscarriage, they should take you to a separate place where you're not triggered by hearing.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, I'm sure there's a campaign at the minute in the UK that's trying to get them to separate it. I know my second miscarriage, I was put in a side room on my own, but it was literally next door to the room where they were confirming on the births. I can still tell you now the names of the 3 women who went in, got told, yeah, you're 6 weeks pregnant, congratulations, blah, 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 and then all went home in the time that I was sat there literally bleeding through pads. So, yeah, I am absolutely on your side for that. It shouldn't be a thing that you're going through something like that. It's like, you wouldn't sit someone who was dying next to, you know, the birthing suite. You wouldn't, it's not a thing that should be happening. So, yeah, I absolutely agree that even if it has to be on the same ward, it should still be the other end of the ward, or you're not walking past people who have got babies in arms and things like that. It should be a separate area completely. But yeah, it's horrific that I think it's the lack of care that you get. it's just not nice. It's not great at all. So yeah, no, I totally agree with you 100% there.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it interesting, like, before you have the baby, like, the care is so minimal, and then you have this period where everyone's on you, like, are you okay? And then you have the baby and
It all
everyone
disappears again.
disappear. It's the weirdest thing. It's like
Mhm.
you just have this small window where everyone's like, oh my God, the baby is so exciting, blah, blah, blah. And then crickets. And then when are you going to have another baby? And then you go through it. I mean, the state of just being a mother it's something that, so, you asked that question in the beginning, like, did you think about it? Not this way. Not this way. Like,
Yeah.
if I could turn back time and I wouldn't change anything, but I would just be better at making sure that I have the right resources to deal with this, because and I would tell any person who's like, I want to have a family in the future, like I almost want to be like, hey, listen, I don't want to put a damper on your dreams. However, I think be prepared. Like, a good number of women end up having a miscarriage, they end up having a stillbirth. There's just so many things. And so just like having that, like just knowing that is so much.
Can prepare you so much better.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always said all along, and especially when I'm talking like with mums like yourself who have got different stories, I never ever shy away from a tragic story, a sad story, a story of loss and things like that, because we don't talk about it enough. And there is a dark side to birth and motherhood and things like that. And if no one's talking about it, how are you expected to understand it, to navigate it? If it happens to you, where are you supposed to go? But then also for the people who, like you said, they might get pregnant, have a beautiful pregnancy, wonderful birth, gorgeous baby at the end of it, and sail through it and have no issues and this, that, and the other. But how do you enjoy that amazing light that you have if you don't understand what the darkness is? And if you don't get to the end and go, do you know, I've done all of this and I had a wonderful birth and I really enjoyed it and I was really lucky and I really, really had a fantastic time and brilliant, yay for me. If you don't understand that there's an underlying, well, this could have happened, that could have happened, all the rest of it, because you just go, oh, well, I got pregnant and I had a baby. That's how it happens, isn't it?
Right. No, 100%. I mean, and I wonder, right? Like, had I gone through just like an easier pregnancy or no miscarriage, like what kind of person would I be today? And I think that, I like to take any adversity and just find the silver lining. Like, yeah, the miscarriage was very stressful, it's very tough. But now going through postpartum, I have more of like a compassionate, empathetic kindness to myself, because I look at this baby that refuses to take a nap and I'm like, I get it. It's rough and you don't want to take a nap. And I'm reminded very quickly, like, how badly I wanted this child. And I think and not to say that the bond, I can only speak from my experience. I will tell you right now, had I not gone through what I went through, a lot of things that are happening, I could have taken them for granted. Like, I could have just easily been like, yeah, I got pregnant so easy. It's no big deal. I honestly might have had a harder postpartum journey, because by the time I was going through postpartum, I had gone through so much depression, so much stress, that postpartum was like, yeah, there is postpartum anxiety, there's postpartum rage. And I've also figured out resources on how to deal with these things throughout the course of the miscarriage, the pregnancy, all the way until now. I feel like it would have been such a shock for me to go through smooth pregnancy, smooth, no miscarriage, and then boom, life hits you and you're not sleeping, you are completely stressed out, the baby's screaming. It's just, I try to find these silver linings. And so I don't know, again, this is another thing, we don't talk about a lot as moms, is that I don't know how other moms are going through postpartum. Like, I don't know what that experience is like. You'll get glimpses of it here and there where moms will be like, it is really hard. And then some people are like, oh, it's the easiest thing. I just bounced back. It's another taboo thing that we're like,
Show me someone who says they've bounced back and I'll show you a liar.
you know what I mean? People like, it's so easy. I have the easiest baby. My baby sleeps. And I'm just always like, really?
Yeah. Did they really? Right. Oh.
Like, really? Okay, I guess maybe, you know. So it's tough, but and you have to figure out a way to get over it. Not over it, but like compartmentalize it. Like put it where it needs to be, and then you gotta figure out to move forward. And for me, I think the challenges I went through made me much more compassionate now, postpartum.
Yeah.
To myself and just to life, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say about sort of like the care that you get as well, because obviously we just touched on like you didn't really get very compassionate, caring sort of support and things like that. And I know we haven't really sort of spoken about your other care, and we haven't even got to the birth yet, so we're gonna have to make this a two-parter because I am literally gonna have to go in the next few minutes. But I know sort of like generally as women we get a bit of a rough deal in the care department. We get a rough deal with things. I mean, it was even just earlier today I was talking to someone about the gender medical gap, where men say, and this is a big example at the minute, men who go for vasectomies are like, oh, you need to take it really easy, and you need to have all of these pain relief, and you need to have this, and you need to have support at home, and this, that, and the other. And then when they're doing C-sections, they're like, yeah, shut your face while I rip you open, and just take some paracetamol, you'll be all right, you know. And it's like, whoa, hello, like, let's go on there. And I mean, I hope I'm not going to like sort of like offend you or anything like this, but I mean, is it also statistics and what have you? But for people like yourself, like Black women, have even more of a raw deal because of then you've got racism that's added on top of that, and other things that are added on top of it. And actually, you probably had even less care than say a woman who was white who walked in and had the same sort of things going on. So is it any wonder why you've had all of these things and you've had a rough deal, you've had a rough pregnancy, you now, like, if you don't mind me saying, that you seem like you're going through a bit of a rough time postpartum. I mean, don't get me wrong, I am as well, and I'm 2 years down the line from my last one, you know. It gets better, I promise, it gets better, but it's rough, right? But it's just it's so enlightening when you go, how is this happening in the world? Like, we are literally the goddesses who are providing children. We are making other humans, and you treat us like crap.
100%. I mean, it's every region is different, but like the length of maternity leave, the fact that a C-section is considered taking an easy way out.
Oh, don't even get me started on that. I mean, personally, haven't had a C-section, would not want one. It was, and like, I know, you know, we have to wrap up soon, but that's a whole other topic. I was having a home birth. The plan was to have a home birth, and the home birth ended up not, like, I was in labor for 27 hours at home. And right when I was getting ready to, I think I was like 9.5, 8.5 dilated, I get into the tub and his heart rate starts dipping with every contraction. So my uterus started swelling. So I redilated back. So we had to do a transfer into the hospital. So already I'm like, everything's falling apart. And then they come in and they say, I'm sorry, we're going to have a C-section. And I'm like, what? Yeah.
How did I go from a home birth to a C-section? Now, I had a doula, I had a midwife, I had people that had kind of done a lot of work in terms of like my birth plan and what I wanted, for a lot of reasons, like you said, like Black women have the highest rate of like death or infections or anything happening during birth. So I wanted to avoid all of that. And I was very transparent with my doctor too, the surgeon. I was like, I need to get out of this hospital and with my baby.
Yeah.
I have to, with no complications. Like, I'm putting my life in your hands. And it's scary. It's scary. It's major surgery.
Yeah.
Like 7 layers, Major surgery.
Yeah.
It's
And
not
then
a
they
joke.
go, yeah, you've been in here for 2 days, there's your baby, now go home. And that's it for part 1 of my conversation with Linda. I know this has been a heavy episode, and if it's brought up emotions for you, please be gentle with yourself. Early miscarriage is so often brushed aside, but your grief is real, your feelings are valid, and you deserve support. I will be putting signposting in the show notes below. We will continue this conversation, diving deeper into Linda's story and going into the birth of her son. If this episode has resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you'd like to connect, you can find me over on Instagram at Mother_Gaia_Crabtree. Until next time, take care. Remember, you are never alone in this.